Hey, this is Mrs. Sebastian. We're going to look at finding volumes with unit cubes today. So our first question is, what is the volume of the cube? So we've looked at volume already where we said the volume is length times width times height. So here you would have 2.5 times 2.5 times 2.5. And if I just plug that into my handy dandy calculator, I get that the volume of this is 15 and 625 thousandths inches cubed. Okay, what is the volume of this prism? So all I'm going to do is multiply length times width times height. Okay, so the length is 3. It doesn't matter which one you put this in, which order. The width is 1 and the height is 1.5. So all I'm going to do is multiply this. 3 times 1 times 1.5 does give me 4.5, and that will be feet cubed. Okay, rectangular prism with a length of 5.25, a width of 4, and a height of 12. The prism can be filled with blank unit cubes that have edges of 1/4. What is the volume of the prism? So this is a little different. Okay, I like to think of it as, okay, how many cubes will I be putting in 5.25? Okay, so I'm going to put 5.25 split up into 1/4 sections. So I can just divide it by 1/4 and I get, okay, that's 21 blocks across. Okay, then I say, okay, how many can I get on the 4-meter side? So I divide that by 1/4. So on the 4-meter side, I get that that's going to be 16 blocks. And on the 12-meter side, I get that that's going to be 48 blocks. So now all I have to do is multiply the length, width, and height using those unit blocks. So 21 times 16 times 48, and I get 16,128. That's how many blocks at 1/4 meter blocks it would take to fill up that box. Okay, but now I have to figure out what's the volume of that. So I have to figure out the volume of the block first, which is 1/4 times 1/4 times 1/4. And that gives me 0.015625. So I'm going to take my big old number and divide it by the volume of each block so that I can count how much I actually have for volume in this. Sorry, not divide, multiply by that. So let me 28 times 0.015625. So the area of this prism is 262 and 800ths meters cube. Okay, so I'm glad I showed you that because I missed my math just a little bit. I'm going to do that again. 16,128 times 0.015625. There we go. Much better. I knew it should be a whole number, but that is 252 meters cubed. Okay, a rectangular prism has a length of 4, a width of 1.5, and a height of 2.5. Okay, we're going to split them by a half here. So how many half-centimeter blocks can we fit? In the 4, if we divide 4 divided by half, we get that would be 8 blocks. And 1.5 divided by a half, we get that would be 3 blocks. And 2.5 divided by half, that would be 5 blocks. So now I'm going to find the volume of all of that 8, 3, and 5. 8 times 3 times 5. And I get that that volume is 120. Okay, but that's 120 not centimeters, but unit cubes. So now I have to find out the volume of that unit cube. So it's 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2. Okay, so that tells me the volume is 0.1, whoops, ran out of room, there we go, 125. Okay, so now all I have to do is multiply these two together. And I do get that the volume is 15 centimeters cubed. Okay, a rectangular prism has a length of 6, a width of 2.25, and a height of 3. How many unit cubes with side lengths of 1/4 does it take to fill the prism? So, how many quarter meter blocks would it take to fill up 6 meters? So, I'm going to say 6 divided by 1/4, and I get 24. 2.25 divided by 1/4 gives me 9. And 3 divided by 1/4 gives me 12. So now all I have to do is say 24 times 9 times 12. And I get 2,592 blocks. Okay, the volume is length times width times height. So what is the volume of this prism? So we're just going to multiply together 3 times 2.25. I'm going to put it in decimal because then it's easier to put in my calculator, times 3. So all I've got to do is multiply 6 times 2.25 times 3. And I get that my volume is 40.5, and that is meters cubed. And I see 40.5 is right here. Okay, what is the volume of this cube? Well, we know that that's 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2. 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2 is 0.125, or if we just multiply it across, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. So that is also 1/8. Okay, and that is inches cubed. Okay, the cube has an edge length of 5.5. How many unit cubes with edge lengths of 1/2 does it take to fill the cube? So, in 5.5, I have to have 11 cubes to fill each side. Remember, the cube is each side length times itself 3 times. So I'm doing 11 times 11 times 11. And I get that that is 1,331, and that is inches cubed. Oh, sorry, unit cubes. Unit cubes. There we go. Okay, what is the volume of this cube? So you're just going to do the same thing. 5.5 times 5.5 times 5.5. And you get 166 and 375 thousandths, or 166 and 3/8, and that is inches cubed. So a rectangular prism has a length of 1/2 meter, a width of 1/2 meter, and a height of 6 meters. How many unit cubes with edge lengths of 1/2 meter does it take to fill the prism? So the length, it's only going to take 1. The width, it's only going to take 1. And the height, it will take 12. 6 divided by 1/2 is 12. So I'm just going to multiply 1 times 1 times 12, and I get that it would take 12 unit cubes with edge lengths of 1/2 meter. Okay, what is the volume of this? So all I'm going to do is multiply length times width times height. So I'm going to multiply across the top. 1 times 1 times 6 is 6. 2 times 2 is 4. And I'm going to simplify that. 4 goes into 6 one time with 2 left over. And I could simplify that a little bit more down to 1/2. And that is meters cubed.